He'd worked nights for 6 years. 6 years of empty parking garages, humming vending machines, and silence so complete he could hear his own heartbeat. He thought he understood empty buildings. He was wrong. His name was Marcus. 41 years old, divorced, 2 kids he saw every other weekend, and a mortgage that didn't care how tired he was. The job was simple. Walk the floors of a 9-story office building from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Check the doors, log the rounds, go home. Nothing ever happened. That was the point of the job. Boring was good. Boring meant safe. The building had been empty for 3 weeks before that night. A full corporate floor laid off overnight. Cubicles still full of framed photos nobody had come back for. Marcus had walked past those desks 100 times. Coffee mugs with dried rings at the bottom. A child's drawing taped to a monitor that would never be turned on again. He never thought about it too hard. You couldn't in this job. You had to let the emptiness stay empty, or it started to feel like something. That night, something felt different before he even clocked in. The lobby lights flickered once when he badged through, and the guard he was relieving, a quiet, older man named Ray, didn't make his usual small talk. He just handed over the radio, looked at Marcus for a second too long, and said, "9th floor's locked. Leave it locked." Then he left. Marcus assumed it was maintenance. He didn't ask. The first 7 rounds were normal. Elevators humming, motion sensor lights clicking on ahead of him and off behind him, the building breathing its slow mechanical breath. It was on the 8th floor, checking the stairwell door, that he heard it. Footsteps, 1 floor up. Even, unhurried, deliberate. 9th floor. The locked floor. He told himself it was pipes settling, the building cooling after the day's heat. He'd said that to himself 100 times before, about 100 harmless sounds. But these weren't creaks. These were steps. Heel, then toe. A person's rhythm. He climbed to the 9th floor door and pressed his ear against it. Nothing. He checked his log. The door was supposed to be locked, and it was, exactly as Ray said. He almost walked away. Almost. But something in him, some old, animal part of his brain, made him crouch down and look through the gap beneath the door. The lights on the 9th floor were on. Every one of them. He hadn't turned them on. Nobody was supposed to be up there at all. He radioed the front desk. No answer. It was 3 a.m., and he was the only guard on shift. He stood there a long moment, hand on the cold handle, telling himself the only sane thing was to walk away and note it in the log for the morning crew. That's what any reasonable man would do. But he thought about his daughter, who'd once asked him if he was ever scared at work, and he'd told her no. Nothing to be scared of. It's just an empty building. He didn't want that to have been a lie. He used his master key. The floor was exactly as it had been left 3 weeks ago. Desks, photos, the child's drawing still taped to the dead monitor. Except now, every chair in the room had been turned to face the same direction. The door he was standing in. Not one out of place. Every single one, aimed at him, like an audience waiting for something to begin. He didn't run. He wanted to say that later, when he tried to explain it to anyone who would listen. He didn't run. He walked backward, slow, until he reached the stairwell, and only then did his legs decide on their own to move faster than he told them to. He filed the report at 7 a.m. His replacement read it, laughed, and said the 9th floor was locked for renovation. Nobody had been up there in weeks, and nobody had a key but him and Ray. Marcus asked to be reassigned the next day. He never gave a reason. Some things, he said, you don't explain. You just stop walking toward them. Some fears don't come from what you see. They come from what you hear, and then don't hear again. Her name was Delaney, 26, a community college dropout, working nights at a distribution warehouse the size of 6 football fields, saving up for nursing school, one overnight shift at a time. She wasn't scared of the dark. She'd tell you that herself. She was scared of something much harder to explain, being forgotten, being the only person left in a place built for hundreds. The warehouse ran 3 shifts a day, forklifts and conveyor belts, and 100 voices calling out over the noise. But from midnight to 6, it was just her, alone with 40,000 square feet of stacked pallets and a radio that only crackled with static from a dispatcher 2 counties away. She liked the quiet, most nights. It felt earned, like she was the last one standing. That night started like any other. Badge in, lights on in sections as she walked them. The low mechanical hum of refrigeration units on the east wall. Her job was simple. Walk the perimeter every hour. Check the dock doors were sealed. Note anything out of place. Routine. Except at 1:47 a.m., her radio picked up a voice that wasn't dispatch. It was faint, buried under static. But it was a voice. A man's voice. Calm. Saying a name. Not her name. A name she didn't recognize. Repeated twice. Like someone reading it off a clipboard. Then nothing. She held the radio for a full minute, waiting. Dispatch confirmed later they'd sent nothing at that time. No one had. She almost let it go. You let a lot of things go, working alone at night. Sounds that are probably just the building, shapes that are probably just shadows. But an hour later, doing her round of Dock Bay 12, she found one of the roll-up doors open 6 inches. Just 6 inches, cranked up by hand, facing out into a dark employee lot with no cameras. She'd checked that door 40 minutes earlier. It had been sealed. Company policy was clear. If you find a breach, call it in and wait for a second guard before investigating. But the nearest backup was 30 minutes out, and if it was nothing, an equipment glitch, a forklift operator who'd left something unlatched, she'd look foolish for pulling someone out of bed. She told herself that. She believes, looking back, that's exactly what someone wants you to think. She walked toward the door with her flashlight low, the way she'd been trained, and that's when she noticed the pallets near the opening had been moved. Not knocked over, not disturbed by accident, but rearranged into a narrow path, like a hallway built out of cardboard boxes, leading from the open door deep into the stacks, toward the employee break room. Someone had made a walkway, on purpose, for someone to follow. She didn't follow it. That decision, she says now, is the only reason she's telling this story, instead of someone else telling it about her. She backed away, sealed the door manually from a control panel 30 feet off, and locked herself in the security office, radio in one hand, phone in the other, until the sun came up and the morning shift walked in laughing about something from the night before, completely unaware that anything had happened at all. When she pulled the dock camera footage the next day, the timestamp from 1:40 to 2:15 a.m. was corrupted. Just that half hour. Every other hour of that night, and every night before and after, was crystal clear. She still works nights. She says the job pays better than anything else she's qualified for, and you can't let one bad night take away the whole rest of your life. But she never works Dock Bay 12 alone anymore. And she never, ever answers a name on the radio that isn't hers. Every guard has a building that never leaves them. For Tomás, it was an old psychiatric hospital, decommissioned 20 years earlier, waiting for demolition, and paying him just to make sure nobody snuck inside before the wrecking crews arrived. He was 58, ex-military, the kind of man who didn't scare easy and would tell you so without being asked. 30 years of shift work had taught him that fear was mostly a story your body told you in the dark, and the trick was refusing to listen. He took the job because it paid well for doing almost nothing. Walk the grounds twice a night, make sure the fence held, log it, go home. The hospital had been empty since before he was hired. Nothing inside could hurt him. That's what he believed, and for the first 2 weeks he was right. The building itself unsettled most people on site. 6 stories of peeling paint and boarded windows, corridors that still had patient room numbers stenciled on the doors, a nurse's station with a rotary phone still sitting on the counter, coated in 20 years of dust. Tomás wasn't required to go inside. His contract was for the exterior only. But on the 15th night, doing his second perimeter walk at 2 a.m., he saw a light moving behind a third-floor window, slow, deliberate, room to room, like someone doing rounds of their own. He called it in. The property manager told him what he already knew. The power to that wing had been cut years ago. There was no electricity up there, no possible source for a light. He almost let that be the end of it, almost radioed it in as a reflection, a trick of his own flashlight against old glass, and gone back to his truck. But he'd spent 30 years being the kind of man who checked things others walked away from, and some habits don't retire just because you tell them to. He found the maintenance door around back, the one he wasn't supposed to use, and let himself in. The air inside was colder than it had any right to be, and the silence had a texture to it, thick and expectant, like the whole building was holding its breath along with him. He climbed to the 3rd floor by flashlight, boots echoing off tile that hadn't been walked on in 2 decades, except by him. The hallway was long, doors on both sides, each one hanging slightly open, as if someone had checked every room and left in a hurry. At the end of the hall, one door was closed, just one, and beneath it, a thin line of light, warm, yellow, the kind an old bulb gives off, not the cold white of a flashlight. He stood outside it a long time, telling himself every rational thing a rational man tells himself. Empty generator, faulty wiring, a trespasser with a lantern who'd bolt the second he opened the door. None of it made the room feel any less like something that was waiting for him specifically. He opened it. The room was bare except for a single hospital bed, neatly made, and a chair positioned beside it, angled toward the door, toward him, as though someone had been sitting there, watching the hallway, waiting for exactly this moment. The light was gone the instant the door swung open. Not dimming, gone, like a candle pinched out between 2 fingers. And in the sudden dark, he heard, very clearly, the unmistakable creak of the chair settling, as if whoever had been sitting in it had just stood up. He didn't stay to find out what stood up. He walked out of that building the way he'd walked out of worse places in his life, steady, controlled, refusing to give his legs permission to run, because 30 years of training told him that running is what you do when there's something behind you, and turning around to check was a luxury he wasn't willing to pay for. He finished his contract. He never went past the maintenance door again, and he never told the property manager what he saw, because some reports don't help anyone. They just make the next guard afraid to do the job at all. But to this day, if you ask him what real fear feels like, he won't describe the room, or the bed, or the chair. He'll tell you it was the sound of that creak, in the dark, meaning something in that room had been waiting for him, and had just gotten up to follow. If these 3 stories kept you looking over your shoulder, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us which story got under your skin the most, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.